Hi everyone, it's Margot from ISC Group again, and here we are at the closing keynote. I hope you've enjoyed the event so far and you've had a chance to wander around the exhibition collecting points so that we can award you some of those prizes. After Lee's session, Mari Kinsella, our CEO, will thank everyone and close the event, but we'll also invite you to complete a survey which gives you 100 points towards your prizes. So please stay online afterwards to go through that process. Lee's going to be talking about mixed reality in this closing session, so I'll pass over to Lee.
Thanks, Margot, and thanks everybody for joining us today and for joining us for this last session before the wrap-up. It's really been a pleasure to be involved in it. I really enjoyed it. So for those that didn't see my first session, this is sort of a continuation of that first session where I talked about AI and autonomous systems and how they're helping us. And now we're going to talk about the integration of AI and mixed reality systems. So how do we bring the augmentation of mixed and virtual environments and the digital environments into the real world in the pursuit of safer, easier, and better work experiences and workplaces for people. I work for Microsoft Australia, and whilst I'm going to be talking a bit about a Microsoft product, obviously for me, I wanted to really think about this from the context of how does it help broadly the industry and industries that can take advantage of this technology. So with that, and with my first slide, I'm going to open up with a little bit of a promo video just to kind of get you in the mood for technology. So let me just get the slide up. So that was a quick promo of the HoloLens 2 technology, which is something Microsoft's been working on under our mixed reality side of the business. And we partner with a whole range of other people who are also building these headsets with us to create a broader ecosystem around this. But this last session is to really think about how does that mixed reality capability, that technology, how's it going to change the way we work? And more specifically, I guess, with the focus on, from a health and safety perspective, how does it help us create and build and operate within safer working environments. So we're going to talk a little bit about the technology to begin with, and then we'll get to some of those scenarios. So, and as I said, I don't really want to, this session is not really specifically about HoloLens, it's about mixed reality, but let's just look at the technology today, because this is the journey we're on. I mean, HoloLens is virtual reality has been around since the 90s, but, and I recently purchased myself a VR kit to play around with at home, and just the rate of change, the capability of what VR has today compared to where it was is astronomical. And the same is true of the mixed reality world and the pace of which this technology is evolving. So the first area to think about is just the immersiveness of that experience. So just capturing that broader field of view. So when you think about this in a work environment, the ability to capture your peripheral vision, not just a focused tunnel view on what's in front of you, but to be able to map and match up a virtual and physical world in a broad view, really changes the experience and makes it far more immersive and connected to the human experience. And then the last thing with that experience is no longer requiring fixed devices in order to track your hand movements, but now fully recognizing your hand movements. So if you think about a very dexterous type of role in, say, medical work, where you're as a doctor, using your hands to move and touch is a very natural behavior, and incorporating that into the mixed reality is now where we're at. This is interesting, actually, the comfort of it, and obviously everybody would want to wear something that's comfortable. That's a critical piece, and you are essentially wearing a holographic computer on your head, so there is weight distribution between the back and front. That's obviously important, but one of the most important things that we developed in HoloLens 2, which was something we hadn't really thought about, but it's important for a lot of work environments, is the flip-up visor, the ability to move it away from your line of sight without having to keep taking it off and on again. What we realized in a lot of heavy-duty work environments is it's not practical to keep taking headgear off and on. We've done work with companies like Trimble and others to actually integrate the HoloLens into a hard hat. And in that scenario, you can't take it off if you're in a dangerous work environment. So the flip-up visor simply allows you to move in and out of that environment without compromising your personal safety gear. And the last thing that we will touch a bit on in some of these solutions is just when you get yourself into this approach and use this virtual technology, the simplicity and speed, it's very intuitive. It essentially looks, it appears in front of you. You'll see in the videos in a bit, and it makes it feel very natural and very real as an experience. So when we look at that in terms of the workplace and how does this where does it apply? We're really going to focus on column one and two today. So we think about this idea of remote assistance. How do you bring deep domain skills into the workplace when they might not necessarily be in the same room, same place, or even the same country? And then how do you build training as a visual, hands-on experience versus where we traditionally do training today through manuals and classrooms? And the other two areas obviously very important around collaboration, but we're going to focus on those pieces from a health and safety perspective to begin with. So the question we often get asked whenever I kind of start talking about mixed reality and you see some of these these scenarios, these things that are able to be done, the first question is, well, who's doing it? I mean, the reality is, that seems very far-fetched. Who's actually getting engaged in that? So this report, which was done in 2018, so it's actually, it's new, but it's not that new, identified 87% of the companies surveyed, I think it's a couple hundred companies surveyed, were already exploring mixed reality or piloting solutions to evaluate how it fits into either their training mechanisms or their ongoing operational management of their factory floor and operations. So it's real, it's happening today. It's not like this is just the stuff of edge cases. This is very accessible, very real technology that could be used today. So when we think about this purely from a skilling perspective, how do we use mixed reality to bring a better mechanism for accelerating people's skills and thereby enabling them to work more efficiently and more safely in the more complex or risky or hazardous type of environments, first-line workers and factory workers, those that work in hazardous environments or with hazardous equipment? What does mixed reality really bring to the picture to make that a better experience? The first one we're going to touch on is something called remote assist. Now you'll see a little video after this that'll give you a full view of what this really means, but this is the idea that where you're wearing a holographic headset, the first thing you can do is you can have holographic images overlaid on the real world. So imagine you're staring at an engine of a combustion engine from a car, and you're trying to understand where the moving parts are, and you've never seen an engine before. A virtual layer over the top of that, identifying and highlighting where those pieces are, is going to help you immediately navigate your way around that object. But then more importantly is when you need to know how to do something, instead of you turning away, looking at a manual, referring to a guide, or having to have done pre-training, you can then bring the training right into the virtual environment, have it on the screen in front of you, have the person, have the learnings and the training happening real time in front of you. And that person who's skilled could be anywhere because you're connecting them through a virtual teleconference environment. In this case, it's Teams, but the ability to bring those people into that experience is really what we're talking about. And this remote assist model is really about ensuring that you've got those people with domain specialized skills who may not be able to get to every site or may not be practical, have multiple people in that physical space, maybe it's a constrained space, can be there with the technician working on site at that time. So I'm going to roll a little video that'll give you a sense of how this actually plays out through the mobile phone device and through to the physical holographic headset.
Now employees on site can work side by side with experts in remote locations. In an instant, they can share what they see, lend a helping hand, walk through the process step by step, helping solve problems in real time. This is a new vision for work. Now employees can work smarter and bring in the people they need with just a tap. They can troubleshoot, repair, and perform with confidence and speed. They can move freely, pull critical information into view, and stay focused on the task. Their hands free to do the work.
So a couple of really interesting things I think you would have seen in that video is, first of all, the whole journey started on a phone, and you don't actually have to do all of this with the holographic device. You can actually just use a phone to virtually capture the environment and have the overlays appearing. So still have the remote assistance whilst you're using a phone just to see the environment. And the second thing was, you noticed the technician, the lady working on site, didn't have any devices in her hands. She had her hands free. She's able to move the screens to the side, keep them in a peripheral vision, but her hands are free to continue to work, maybe using tools or specialized equipment, but just working natively on the problem that she's solving. It's a super easy way to think about solving problems in real time, whether it's through an iOS, an Android device, or with the HoloLens. Combination of video, combination of conversation. What you don't kind of get a sense of in the video there is that the remote assistance person, the person you might be dialing in, could be using their mouse or a HoloLens themselves and virtually drawing in the air or on the screen indicators about where to go and what to do. And so you're seeing that in real time, and you're getting that very visual learning model and visual experience, as opposed to the sort of the look away at the manual to try to map a 2D image on a page to what you're seeing in front of you. Is a real game changer in that approach to how we see problems being solved in complex manufacturing or complex assembly kinds of scenarios. And the other thing is, of course, in that scenario, it's the ask the expert anywhere, anytime, is that it does allow you as an organization to either tap into what will be very expensive resources who may now be based in other countries and have them accessible to you. There's no time delay. They don't have to fly in or be ready there or kind of be connected to you in some other way. They can be connected to you over the internet like we are right now, and remotely assisting anybody anywhere in any environment. Obviously, internet connectivity being the sort of the criteria there, but that is becoming less and less of a challenge even in a number of hazardous or confined environments. So truly kind of really changing the way in which we think about assistance for remote work, and by virtue of that, reducing the risks of errors and improving employee confidence and capability in the field by use of this kind of task. So the next thing I want to talk about from a tooling perspective is this idea of guides. So there are scenarios like we've just talked about where you bring in an expert because you need that immediate help and it's a very specialized kind of capability. But we also have the scenario of employees working in complex areas where there's a learning process to be gone through, and it doesn't require a specialist, but it requires a set of training processes that we all have to go through. And it's often very hard, and a lot of, as our world becomes more complex, as devices become more complex, and by virtue, complex equals potentially risks or challenges, both in learning scope and risks of the environment you're operating in. That training becomes also more important, and it's much more important to be able to do the training in the environment where you are going to be doing the work. So putting the two things together, not training in the class and then operating in the environment, but training in the environment where you work at. And it's a really important way to, these guides are these kinds of very, same as what you've just seen, a very visual pop-up way of enabling somebody who's learning a task for the first time or having to do a task they've not done very often to do it with confidence, with the right set of instructions, and maintaining that visual sort of amalgamation of the digital and physical worlds together to create that kind of experience. And so this idea is these things are guides, and they're step-by-step processes. You'll see in the little video we'll show in a minute how it's controlled by the user. So the user decides how fast they want to move through the guides, but they're built by those that have the knowledge. They're living, breathing documents. So they're not written manuals that have to be maintained in versions. It's a living, breathing object that sits as a part of your sort of corporate data standards for how these things are done. And they're built by the people that know it. So this is the great thing about the tool set to create these guides. They can be authored by specialists. They're very visual by design, but they're kind of a drag and drop. What you see is what you get kind of environment. No code required, so you don't need to be a specialist in coding to build these things. You just need to understand the task you're explaining to build the guide for. And what you create is this completely immersive experience for a new employee built around years of experience from a specialist that can be applied in the field, in the hands of that person as they're doing the real job, the job that requires that skills. And it's back to, if you were in my first session when I talked about this idea of deep learning and machine teaching, This is a very human equivalent of that, where we are doing a teaching experience. We're teaching somebody how to do something, but we're doing it almost side by side with them, hands on hands, so that they can see it and feel it. And that builds confidence, obviously, in the user. It creates a sense of a safer working environment because they are in control of the learning process. They're in control of the actions. They do the steps at their own pace. And there are less chance of them making an error because they're doing it with tools and technologies that are proven by an expert in the domain. And again, this isn't something that's just, this is not a, it's a new thing, but it's not something that's not been tested and proven. We have a number of customers using this, and one that I think is a really good example is GE Aviation are using this type of technology now to manage the training motions, the training programs around engine maintenance. And if you think about, as some of you may know, aviation engines, hugely complex, very rich devices, multi-layered in terms of the physical attributes of it. And the HoloLens allows you to kind of strip apart those physical layers and allow the user to very quickly understand the deep complexity in a very immersive and visual way. So hopefully that's given you a real kind of, I know, a bit rapid because we don't have a lot of time, but an overview of how these two types of technologies and how generally mixed reality can really change the way that the environment for an employee, for a worker in a hazardous or risky environment, or frontline worker learning a new task, can change the way that they operate and accelerate into the job, and by doing so, create a safer and more risk-free work environment. And so with that, with a couple of minutes to go, I'm going to quickly show you a final video to wrap that story together, and then we'll wrap up. So I'll play the video now.
Work today is more complicated than ever. The old ways of training cannot get new employees up to speed as fast as the experienced people are retiring. We need a better way forward. Introducing Dynamics 365 guides. Simple step-by-step instructions are easily written on a PC, and then holographic parts and icons are simply picked up and placed on the machine where the work is happening. From day one, employees are often expected to get work done, but the complexity can be overwhelming. Now, employees can learn by doing. This is a tool that works with existing processes, allowing a manager to get the right guides to their people. The instructions move with the employees, pointing them to the tools and parts they need, showing them exactly where they need to apply them. Employees get up to speed faster, with fewer errors and more confidence. A simple glance moves them through the instructions, meaning their hands are free to do the work. They can learn at their own pace without having to rely on other workers around them. The overall experience is comfortable and intuitive.
So I really like that video. I think it just tells a really clear story about how technology can really just change such a simple thing and have a very human impact. That nerves of a first day with a complex job to do. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to share that with you, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk to you. We have a minute or two left for questions, and my contact details are there. If you want to throw comments, questions, or criticisms at me, I'm more than happy to take them. But with that, Margot, I guess we're back to the floor.
Yes, with 1 minute and 15 seconds to go, I just wanted to quickly let everyone know that Lee will be at our Workplace Health and Safety Show next year live, where we can all meet again in May. All our fingers and toes are crossed.
Looking forward to it.
If you're very interested in AI and all around autonomous work, then please come along to that show and meet Lee in person. Now, we've got a couple of questions. It might be best for us to send those through to you, Lee. But if you can quickly,
I can touch a couple of them, but do send them through, and I'll send some more complete answers. But Karen, yes, definitely Dynamics has been used in healthcare. In fact, we've done one particular example. We're working in London right now with in the COVID response care center, where they're trying to minimize the number of people in a physical area. So they're using doctors who are on site doing patient rounds and using HoloLens to bring in specialists to deal with some of the symptomatic diagnosis work in the wards. So yes, definitely is the answer to that one. Ben, could VR be used by multiple people at once? Yes, so multiple people at once. Yeah, we actually have a partner that does a piece of work. Their partner's called Spatial, and they are creating a capability where you can bring multiple people in a mixed reality. It's not virtual, mixed reality experience. So you can actually have all the people in a same virtual room at the same time with a virtual avatar, and you kind of conduct your meetings virtually through a mixed reality world. Again, I'm happy to send a link to that when I get all the questions afterwards.
Okay, so that's
That's us done.
That's us done.